welcome to this online songwriting workshop. My name's Pat Nason, and I'm so thankful that Jeff Barber and City of Santa Clarita asked me to take part in this, and I hope to share some interesting and useful stuff with you today about the craft of songwriting. We're going to talk about some concepts, we're going to talk about some practices, best practices, some games and exercises, and also spend a few minutes talking about what you can learn from songwriters just listening to what they say about songwriting. I'm not going to give you a lot of my own personal philosophy, but there are really, really good sources that you can read that can maybe inspire you a little bit and certainly give you some insight into the craft. Because it isn't just a craft. It's if you've already written songs and you've written enough songs, you probably know it's not just a craft, it's also personal expression. And that's something nobody can really teach you. You're going to have to find that on your own. And you're probably well on the way to finding it because you're writing songs. So there you go. So to my way of thinking, one of the first things we always ask when we're talking about, well, how do you write a song? Before you get there, you have to ask, well, why do you write a song? It's an important question. The answer is elusive, but we're going to start the workshop off by considering why it's an important question. You know, maybe there's something inside of you that needs to get out. Maybe it's just fun. Some people have bake sales and some people write songs. You know, it's just fun, you know. Maybe you just can't help it. Maybe you're putting money in the bank. You're a really good songwriter. Or maybe, as the expression used to go, maybe you just want to get the girl. I don't know. But it doesn't matter really what the answer to the question is. What matters is that you ask it and that you consider it. And the reason why I say that is because songwriting is really, it's an exercise in problem solving and decision making. And if you have a rough idea why you're doing this, what your motivation is, then that'll help you make decisions along the way about what phrase do you want to use, what direction do you want the song to go in. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, just to let you know that it's important that you consider the question, whether you come up with an answer or not. So right off the bat, homework. If you haven't spent a lot of time considering the question why you write, take some time during this downtime and think about it. Do some reading on the subject, do some soul searching for all I know, but think about it. If you have given it some thought, I'm going to suggest in the strongest terms, don't overthink it. Again, it's not important really that you know why. It's important that you consider the question, because that's going to help you when you get blocked, when you get to a part where you say, I don't know what I want to do with this song or whatever. You know, just think about, well, what's the point? What am I trying to say here? Why do I want to say this? Why is it important enough to me to put my time into it? So, I think those are important clues, tips to good songwriting. And if you don't care how the song turns out, don't give it much thought. Just let it rip. That's okay too. There's nothing wrong with letting it rip. Some really cool songs have come out of just, you know, stream of consciousness. So let's get into some games, exercises. And the first thing I want to tell you about exercises and games, you should know you might get a really cool song out of a game or an exercise, or you might not. Most of the time you don't. And that really doesn't matter, because that's not the point of the game. The point of the game is, for example, if you ever saw Karate Kid, you know, the wax on, wax off deal, those are games. What they do is they exercise the muscles that you're going to use when you're writing a song. We're going to consider 3 games today, different ones, that are going to help you exercise the muscles that you're going to use, the intellectual muscles, maybe even the emotional muscles that you're going to use when you practice when you sit down and start to write in earnest. And they're practical, and they don't really open any doors in your imagination necessarily, although they might give you they might wind up giving you an insight, they might just wind up giving you something a little on the practical side that you can use when you're choosing what rhyme to use, or what meter to use, or what verse structure to use. because structure is so incredibly important in songwriting. You know, I think it was Oscar Hammerstein who talked about the math of songwriting. There is a structure, and you have to pay attention to the structure. The structure, actually, in a way, it feels like maybe it restricts me because I'm limited to this number of syllables or this number of lines in a verse. And it kind of does limit that, but what it does is it gives you the freedom within that limitation to just bounce off the walls and do anything you want to do within the structure. The structure is important because for a listener to get a song, there needs to be some order to it. If a song is orderly and well organized, you have a much better chance of getting your song, your idea, your feeling. You have a much better chance of getting it across if you have a well organized song. Bring the feeling, of course, because that's what it's all about. If it's not about the feeling, I don't care. You can have great words, you can have great melodies, but if you don't have any feeling, it's probably not going to be much of a song. So anyway, exercises and games. We're going to start with one that you're probably familiar with. It's prompts. You can get a prompt from anywhere. If you're in a songwriting group, if you have some friends, you're just two of you collaborating sometimes, just throw out a prompt and say, hey, write a song about the mailman. You know, there are songs about mailmen. You can say, well, write a song about technology. Any prompt. You can find a prompt, you can pull it out of the air, or you can overhear it in line at the grocery store. You know, you can hear somebody say something and they turn a little phrase. And the next thing you know, you have a prompt. Make yourself write a song about that. Now investigate the prompt. Let's say the prompt is hotel. So you think about a hotel. You think about, what does that call up for you? Now list a whole bunch of things that you know about hotels or questions that you have about hotels. This is a game now. We're not writing a song right now. We're just doing an exercise. So hotel, well, who stays there? How much does it cost? What happens there? Do people get robbed? Do people fall in love? Do people fall out of love? Did somebody lose your luggage? Was a bellhop rude to you or exceedingly kind? How was the food in the hotel restaurant? How was the parking? List all these questions. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time doing it. Maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Just write them down. You know, keep a pad handy, right? Or if you use a screen, it's all the same to me. But write them down and list these things that you know about a hotel. If you want to start writing a song about a hotel, and did they have bed bugs? Were the flowers nice when you walked into whatever your imagination can conjure about a hotel. Now you've got all these notions. Now step back, consider them, take a look at them. See if there's a story in there. See if there's a pattern. See if you can tie some of these notions together. Oh, the flowers in the coffee shop were really beautiful and they smelled lovely. And then somebody beautiful walked in and put the flowers to shame. I don't know, that's up to you, but you see what I'm getting at. Look at these concepts that you've collected about a hotel. Or let's say the horseradish. Let's say the prompt is horseradish, and all of a sudden your mind goes to, oh man, I had horseradish once and it was terrible. Or I didn't know I liked horseradish until I tried it. That might not give you a song about horseradish, but it might give you a song about try it, you'll like it. It might give you a song about tastes that you've never considered. You could make a whole song about, well, and then, you know what, next thing I knew, I put honey on my bacon and it was great. Now this sounds like a lot of nonsense, and it kind of is, because it's a brainstorm. There's not supposed to be any, it's almost like a David Lynch movie or a dream, you know, just look at all this stuff, then step back and then consider it. Put it in some kind of order, and look for a theme, and look for something that's, oh yeah, you know, that would make a really cool song. So that's, here's another way you can get a prompt. Grab a book. You know, there's this meme going around right now. Pick up a book the closest to you and open to page 56, and the 12th word on that page is your name for the coronavirus pandemic or whatever. But it's a good game to use for a song prompt. So pick up a book, open it to any random page, and then pick out any random word on the page. You know, it could be the 16th word or the 4th word, whatever. If the word is the, choose another word, because the isn't really going to prompt much of anything. But anyway, do that. Find a word. Maybe the word is hostile, or maybe the word is unbelievable. Now, let your mind go and take a look at that word and go, well, what does this bring up for me? And don't labor over it. Work fast. So you see, if you see the word unbelievable, the first thing you think of is, I don't know, some politician, or I don't know, something that your cousin did at the last birthday party that was unbelievable, right? Use these prompts. Let them tell you, let them lead you to something that you know about, something that you experienced, or let them lead you to something that you maybe fantasized about at some point in your life. But hold on to that thing. I'll tell you a prompt that actually just kind of, and I bet you this has happened for you. A word or a phrase just kind of floats through the air into your mind. And you go, well, where'd that come from? This phrase popped into my mind just one night when I was just going to sleep, and I wasn't quite asleep yet, and all of a sudden, the phrase, a most unusual nose. Yeah, a most unusual nose. It just kind of floated through and into my brain. And I didn't know what to do with it, but I held on to it because it kind of took up lodging in my brain. And I stayed with it. And then I thought, okay, well, a most unusual nose. What does that even bring up for me? Well, physical beauty or not. You know, there's all kinds of songs to be written about, you know, concepts of physical beauty and what it does to us if we don't think we're so good looking. It's a love song, really, because it's about self-image and so on. Anyway, it led to a song about somebody who was beautiful in every way except for this huge nose. Her eyes were a beautiful blue, her hair a magnificent yellow. She had more than enough of all the right stuff, but she never could find her a fellow. She had a most unfortunate nose, as big as your fist and as red as a rose. She was cute as a button from her head to her toes, if you just didn't look at her nose. So a most unfortunate nose, that's actually what the phrase was. But there you go. It can come from anywhere, literally anywhere. You know, you could be sitting on the, never mind that, you could be sitting at the breakfast table and the eggs are running. Grab everything and make a prompt out of it. That's an exercise. And if you come up with a really good song, good for you. And if you don't worry about it, because the more you do this exercise, the closer it brings you in touch with the tools that you use. And the better you get at handling the tools, the more progress you'll make as a songwriter. So, and I can't emphasize this enough, do it quickly. It's an exercise. You're not sitting down to write the greatest song anybody ever made. It's an exercise. Work those muscles. Now, the next game or exercise that I like is, I call it Tell Me a Story. Something we used to do with the kids when they were small. I'd have the kids give me a person and a place and a thing. And then Daddy make up a story for me. So they would say, let's say the person was Mom. And the place was the butcher shop. And the thing was chicken. So you start with that, and you make up a story around those things. And again, doesn't have to be the greatest story anybody ever wrote. It's just an exercise to start to use your capacity to take elements and blend them together into a story. So maybe Mom went to the butcher shop to buy a chicken, but they didn't have any chickens, or they had them, but they couldn't give them to her right now. They had to deliver them later. So now the butcher comes by later in the evening and delivers the chicken. Make up this story as much, make it as elaborate as you like. Just fill it with elements, Oh, the butcher's car broke down. Because all of these things are going to lead you in the direction, not necessarily of a song, but in the direction of handling transitions, making changes, keeping it fresh, all those things. So again, write down your notions, right? Make sure that you don't take a whole lot of time doing it. Let it rip, and do that exercise. Same thing with the prompts. Do it 2 or 3 times in an afternoon with a different prompt. And work those muscles. The reason why this is important, I mentioned before about the orderliness of a song. I think it's really, really important that a song be well organized. Think about the great story songs. By the time I get to Phoenix or Ode to Billy Joe, Sam Stone, Hotel California. I know there's a backlash. A lot of people go, Hotel California is bad. I don't care about that. It's a story. It's well organized. It's well told. And the reason why that matters is because not just the structure. Jimmy Webb writes about this in a book he wrote back in the 90s called Tunesmith. And it's a good read, by the way. You should pick it up, look into it, and you'll get a lot of wisdom from Jimmy Webb about songwriting. But anyway, so the reason why so structure matters because it helps listeners follow the story, but to organize that story. Don't say, well, Mom went to the butcher shop and then the butcher delivered the chicken later on. You have to tell the part first about how there wasn't one there and he had to bring it later on in the day, right? Well organized. And the reason why is because, as you know, if you've ever told a joke or heard somebody tell a joke and they didn't tell it right, it bombs. It's just no good. Nobody wants to hear it because, but if you keep it organized, keep it orderly. At the same time, not so, don't be a slave to organization. Don't let the imperative to keep a song well organized sort of squeeze the life out of it, right? I'm not saying be disorganized on purpose. I'm just saying that, if your story's well organized, it's a huge advantage. Now, if you bring the feeling, that's great too. I'll give you another example of that. This is called "The Music to Bottle in You." It's a song I wrote, 6 or 7 years ago with my friend Susan T. Bull. And it was a prompt. It just phrase flowed into my mind on a Saturday night, as a matter of fact, but it goes like, it's a Saturday night and I'd be feeling all right if I just wasn't feeling so blue. But I won't shed a tear 'cause my friends are all here. The music, and you. And then there's a story there. That's a setup. That's a scene setter. There you are. You're alone. You got nothing. It's just you and the music and a bottle of something, and here you are. You're all by yourself. Now what happens after that? The music always helps me remember the times. The bottle always helps me forget. And I know you're long gone. Now you got a story, Oh, why am I alone? Because somebody just left. But your memory hangs on, and I'm not nearly over you yet. But pride is a sin, so let the good times begin. Let's drink to the love we once knew. And let's have a toast to the ones I love most, the music, the bottle, and you. There's a little story there. And then in the second half, the story actually resumes. And there's no point in running that right now, but just to say that just a little thing, it's Saturday night and I'd be feeling all right if I just wasn't feeling so blue, can lead you to a story. There's feeling, there's mood, there's atmosphere, there's a scene. You can see a lot of these things, okay? So if you noticed in that little section right there, there's a couple of rhyming things going on. Let's make a toast to the ones I love most. I didn't make that. That's not original with me. You've probably heard 100 songs that rhyme, let's make a toast, and the ones I love most. That's okay, because the song isn't really necessarily about the rhyme. The rhyme is performing a function, right? So keep your rhyming dictionary handy, or use the website. There's all kinds of websites. Give me a word that rhymes with shoebox. But yes, collect all your rhymes at the beginning of the song before you start to write, before you start to craft a song. Collect all your rhymes. I want everything that rhymes with book. You can do it in your mind, book, cook, EFG, H, hook, look, nook. You can do that. Write them all down and then keep them handy, because that's going to help you actually structure a song. It's also going to help you with the direction of a song. Because you kind of are limited. You're limited by, if you're big on rhymes, and rhymes are pretty important in a song. Again, going back to Jimmy Webb, one of the things that rhymes do for a songwriter, and for a song, and for a listener, is rhymes help a listener sort of stay in the channel, stay in the pocket with the song. They're little posts, like markers along the way. So yeah, rhymes are important. But when you collect all your rhymes at the beginning of a project, and you already know your song is going to be about Christmas. I'm going to write a Christmas song, and it's going to be about commercialism, right? And you have an idea of what you want to write about. And you know that because it's about commercialism, you're going to use a notion of money, or cheap, or expensive, whatever. Once you realize what direction you're going in, think about some phrases you're going to use, collect your rhymes around that. The rhymes that are available to you are going to dictate, really. They're going to strongly suggest what direction your lyrics are going to go in. So I didn't have any problem writing "Let's Make a Toast to the Ones I Love Most," the music, the bottle, and you, because it's familiar and it works. It actually does the job. One of the pitfalls I think that I have run into, and I think a lot of other songwriters will tell you this too, is you don't want to spend a lot of time thinking, well, this has to be the best song I ever wrote, if not the best song anybody ever wrote. You can't do that. You can't top yourself every single time. If you put pressure on yourself to top yourself, you're probably going to fail 9 times out of 10, maybe 19 times out of 20, more than that, I don't know. Just write the song. Just keep writing the song. And in the end, if you write 5 songs or 20 songs or 100 songs, you're going to have a collection of songs, and some of them are going to be pretty good. And some of them are going to be, well, you're not going to play them for people because they're not very good. And all the rest of them are going to fall somewhere in between on that continuum. Don't worry about that. That doesn't mean anything. You're doing the work, and that's really what it's about. Do you want to be excellent? Then be excellent. Do what you must do. If 3 exercises isn't enough, do 4 exercises and 4 times. Just do the work. And by the way, this is as good a time as any to say this. You can if you want to. If you want to be a really good songwriter, you probably can. I mean, you're already interested enough to be doing this much work. You're tuning in, you're watching an online workshop. Maybe you go to workshops. Maybe you go to song circles. Maybe you spend a lot of time with your friends talking about songwriting and all that stuff. That's good. But you don't have to if you don't want to. There's not written in the law somewhere that, if you're going to write a song, boy, you better write a really good one. It just doesn't matter. And it's up to you. That's your call. That's your choice. But if you're going to do it, it's probably a good idea to take it seriously enough to do the work and do the best song you can do. And if you've written songs and you've played them for your friends, then you already know it's a really nice feeling. It's feeling, I hit the mark. I scored. I got a good song, and people laughed at the funny parts, or they cried at the sad parts. So the last game I'm going to mention, and this is going to involve material. I'm going to show you this. I don't know if you can read that, but it's If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Okay, if you know the poem, you know that it's a decent poem. Never mind trying to write If by Rudyard Kipling. That's not why this is printed out this way. The reason why this is printed out this way is because this exercise is kind of like creating a collage. I'm going to show you what you do with this. Let's say you, on the fourth line, or the third word is allowance. So you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut out the word allowance. Yeah, just like that. It's usually a good idea to do this at a table. So there you go. You've cut out the word allowance. Now do that with 6 more words. Now take another poem. I don't have another one printed out right now, but I can show you this. I'll do it with this. This is my outline for the workshop. Let's do that again with another word. Here's on the 5th line, 7th word. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Typically. The word is typically. So you take a bunch of words from 2 different sources. Could be a poem, could be a textbook, doesn't make any difference. And now you take these and you organize them. You just lay them out first, right? Just lay them on the table, and then start to shift them around and see if you can put them in some kind of order. And then you wind up with something like this. And I don't know how well you can read that, but I'll show you that this is from an exercise. And I learned this exercise from Rachel Garland, Garlin, who's a wonderful singer-songwriter. And this is the result of my exercise at a songwriting camp. All those ships were ill. The whole place was rocking. Content be bored. This doesn't make any sense when you read it. Strange, nothing, suffice. Compasses of those poor fellows. We're ill. The needles and some tobacco, not to know the same scrap of garden fallen down and broke. It's gibberish. But you know what? The process of cutting the words up and putting them into some kind of order, again, it's just an exercise, and it gives your mind an opportunity to practice putting things into some kind of order. By the way, all of this stuff that we're talking about here, it might not work for you. It doesn't have to work for you. It doesn't have to work for everybody. You might maybe you're really good at just sitting down and making up a song. And by this time, pretty much a lot of the things that I've said to you in this workshop are, you're not very useful. You're like, well, I don't know. I already know how to do this. It's just easy. Well, good for you. But if you get stuck, these exercises are pretty good. I just have a minute left or two, so I'm just going to wrap up with just considering the question of why write a song again. There's a fellow named Paul Zollo here in Los Angeles who's got a couple of volumes of a book called Songwriters on Songwriting. It's a really, really excellent read. And he's interviewed Tom Petty and Bob Dylan and Paul Simon and James Taylor, all kinds of songwriters, to talk to them about the craft and how do you do it? What occurs, what's going through your mind, and all those things. And Dylan told him, the world doesn't need any more songs. And he said, they've got way too many. And if you're writing songs, sometimes you get that feeling. Sometimes I get the feeling, why am I even doing this? If I could stop right now, and the world isn't going to be better off or worse off than it is right now with my new songs or without them or whatever. Who cares? Who really cares besides, friends and family who are generous enough to sit and listen and all the rest of that. self-doubt stuff that goes through your mind while you're writing. But anyway, he says, as a matter of fact, if nobody wrote any songs from this day on, the world ain't gonna suffer for it. Unless someone's gonna come along with a pure heart and has something to say. That's a different story. So that's what Dylan says. Does it mean if you don't have a pure heart and you don't have anything to say that you shouldn't write songs? Well, no, of course not. Don't be silly. If you feel like writing a song, write a song. If it's any good, people are going to want to hear it. And if it's not, well, there's only one way to get any better at it, and that is to keep writing. Stay with it. And ask any songwriter, and they'll tell you, most people will tell you, that from the very beginning, they've got some songs that they wrote when they were young that nobody ever gets to hear because the songs don't work. But you keep at it, you stay with it, and pretty soon the songs work, and then you got something. Anyway, thanks for your patience and your kind attention, and thanks again to Jeff Barber and the City of Santa Clarita for inviting me to take part in this. And I hope this has been useful to you, and I hope you do some good work. That's the main thing. Enjoy your time writing songs, and this is as good a time as any during this shutdown. Make your time count. So thanks again, and see you on the other side.
Hi, my name is Liza Carbe.
And I'm JP Durand, and we're very happy to be doing this songwriting video for our friends at the City of Santa Clarita.
We are co-founders of the world music group Incendio. We've been together since 2000. We have 11 albums out internationally. We have over 100 million spins on streaming radio.
We've hit Billboard and CMJ, NAV, and Amazon charts.
And we tour about 150 shows annually since 2000.
A lot of road work and a lot of practical things that we've learned over the years. And today we're going to share with you some of our ideas on how we songwrite, how we specifically approach things. Now, we write instrumental music, but we also have quite a bit of film and TV music that has been used. We've got our music library songs placed in everything from Modern Family to Burn Notice to Star Trek to Law and Order. And
we have thousands of placements.
So we've got a lot of experience with both instrumental music, with scoring to picture, and
vocal music,
and with recording a lot of vocal music, recording pop bands and rock bands and rap and everything between. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was our perspective on how to build a song. In terms of songwriting, it's almost as much philosophy it is as practical knowledge. And the thing I'd like to start out with in terms of things we're going to talk about is respecting the spark. That's number one. It's very important that you capture that initial piece of inspiration. Sometimes we've woken up out of a dream and picked up stuff. Sometimes you're just walking somewhere. That's where the iPhone has been so important. Prior to an iPhone, we used to carry around a little recorder.
Yeah, because as he was saying, the spark is so important. Whether that is a melodic idea, whether it's a groove, whether it's a chord sequence, you want to capture it. Because from that, maybe tomorrow, maybe that day, maybe a year from now, that spark can lead to a great song. And you don't want to rely on your memory. There's something about that spark coming in that can leave just as quickly. So you want to get that down.
So we've had iPhone like right next to the dresser. It's off, and then we wake up at 4 a.m. with a song. She'll wake up. I'll wake up. We go, okay, go to another room. Get the idea down, maybe grab a guitar or even just hum it in, and then hopefully you have enough of a reference to remember what the chords were, or the bass line was, or something like that. Just enough frame of reference so that you can build from that in the morning. There's a songwriter we love, Richard Thompson, that for years and years, long prior to little hand recorders and iPhones and stuff, used to walk around with a notebook in his shirt pocket, and he would just jot down lyrical ideas. It's that kind of dedication to getting that initial spark down and making sure that you can get it and you don't lose it. That is so fundamentally important. So we did want to mention that.
And I think that's good too. I still go around with a little notebook sometimes, because sometimes I just prefer to write a lyric down, but something so that you can capture that spark. So from there, whether we're writing for TV and film, whether we're writing an incendio song, an instrumental song, or a song with lyrics, we really approach it the same way. When you're writing a song, you're telling a story. You have an initial statement, you expand upon that statement, you develop that statement, and then you reach the conclusion. It's just like telling any type of story, and it's got to have an arc to it, and it has to be cohesive. For instance, I went out and got the mail today. When I got there, there was a package. So I rushed home and opened it, and it was a present from my mom. It was this purse that I'd wanted for so long. I was so excited about it. It made me really happy. There's an arc to it. You make a statement. You develop that. And that's the same with songwriting. You have your initial statement, and you stay along those lines, and you develop that statement.
In developing that statement, you're going to take a melody, a lyric idea. It can be anything. We have a song that we loved writing. Incendio recorded it. It's a song, it's a Peruvian waltz. And it's called Loretana. Liza wrote actually the bulk of the song. And she recorded that spark sometime in the middle of the night, just an inspired thing, and said, well, how am I going to build upon this?
So this was built around a melody. Some songs, like I say, you've got a groove, and then you come up with a melody around that, or you come up with you hear a chord and you want to build that. But for this particular song, I heard a melody, and then I developed that melody. So we're going to demonstrate to you how that arc works. So here's the initial melody.
This is the I went to go get the mail.
This is I went to get the mail. There you go. There's the
That's what
initial
she
melody.
had. That was it.
And then I expanded on that melody. And now I'm developing that melody. That was the cadence. So you have 4 basic statements. And now we're going to play that with the chords, so you can hear how that works. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 2. So that's the verse right there. And that's built around E minor, A minor, and B7, 3 chords. So that's the basic premise you want to take with any type of songwriting. You want to pull the listener in. You want them to be able to relate to something. So you want the melody to have a nice arc, something that makes sense with what chords you're playing.
Now, with that, did you have the chords in mind when you wrote the melody, or was it just a statement of the melody?
I just had a statement of the melody, and what I did, then I brought that melody to the guitar, and I went, okay, so what does that work with? And then, I had a basic idea because I understood the harmony of the melody that I was writing, so I had a pretty good idea of what the chords were going to be, but I did bring it to the guitar and then figured out the chords. And the melody probably changed along the way too. Maybe I changed a note here or there, but that's basically where it came to after working with it.
And that completed the story, that first part, right? It's a statement and a story. Now,
I was going to say, I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit. There's a story I wanted to tell you with one of my teachers in college. He was one of my symphonic teachers, and we were studying Beethoven at the time. And you've probably heard that saying, keep it simple, stupid. Well, that's kind of almost the same thing you want to do with a melody. You want to keep it simple, something somebody can hold on to. And of course, not everybody does that. But one of the most famous, of course, is Beethoven's Fifth. And with that simple statement, Beethoven developed that statement, elaborated on it, and it's become one of the most famous pieces in history. my teacher was stressing the point that, other people were saying, oh, maybe it's Beethoven's Sixth, the Pastoral Symphony, or maybe it's his grandiose Ninth that's the best because it was so amazing. And he said, maybe the Fifth is the best. It's that simplicity. That's why everybody remembers it. We don't have to think too much about why it's the best or theorize on it. It's just that simple thing. That
Simply beautiful.
Simply beautiful. The simple melody that somebody stated and that we all remember. And from that simple melody, he built something amazing. So don't worry about something being too simple. You can elaborate on it. So that's part of the beauty of writing, is that you come up with an idea and then you elaborate on it.
And that's one thing is kind of funny. I mean, especially if you're going to think jazz, you're going to think all these different elaborate things you could do. The chords to Loredana are very basic chords. You could, and I'm adding like a 5 underneath, right? So you don't get hung up on, instead of this, I could do this kind of minor, or like some sort of altered chord. Respect the first. That's part of respecting the initial first part, is keep it simple. There's going to be all sorts of time you have later to elaborate and do that. And the same thing with lyrics. Respect that initial spark, even if it kind of sounds a little funky. You're going to get to the point where you can shape it. And you might throw out that whole first idea, but you're going to come back around to it. And that's an idea that we're going to hit at the end to never edit. But right now.
Well, no, that's exactly it. You'll hear writers say that too. You don't want to edit as you're going, because you'll stop the flow. It's like, oh no, that's a dumb word. Oh, that's a bad note. Oh, I shouldn't use that chord. Get it out. Just play, because you can go back and edit. If you stop yourself, if you stop your flow, you're going to stop your initial spark. You're going to stop the muse. So get it out there. Once it's there, you can edit. But if you don't get it out there, there's nothing to edit.
Absolutely. That goes. I was going to leave it to the end, but it's an important enough point to bring it up now. Is you need to start writing. You just need to start writing, and write a lot. You're going to write some not so great stuff. You're trying to find your songwriting voice. Do I write more in a minor? Do I write more in a major? Do I like happy songs? Do I like sad songs? Do I like fast songs? Do I like slow songs? How are you going to interpret your voice? You don't know until you try. I was a guitar player, but it's like, oh my gosh, I love Elvis Costello and Joni Mitchell and Jimi Hendrix, and I could never be that great. I don't know that I have anything to say. You don't know until you try, and my first songs were terrible. They were terrible, but I had to get through them. I don't know how much better that's improved, but you have to go through all that stuff to get to the point. I wish somebody had said to me, well, you don't become great instantly. You listen to really early Beatles songs, like In Spite of All the Danger. That one was in the box set. Super early song. Not a great song, an okay song. But everybody starts somewhere, and don't let the fear stop you from generating that spark and making some stuff. Maybe shoot it to a friend that has a sense of what a good song is, or melodies, or any of those kind of things, and bounce ideas off of people. Bounce ideas off us. Bounce ideas off someone you know. And that can be so helpful, because somebody, especially who really knows and understands music, goes, well, you did this, but you really could do that. And once that triggers a spark, and you have enough mentoring and enough other people saying, well, that's great, but that's not so great, boy, it really helps. That's what she and I have been like mentors to each other for years now. That really doesn't work. I really like it. And then eventually you get to decide, well, I disagree with you. I think this really does work, and let me show you how I can make it work. Or that was a really good idea, Liza. I think I'm gonna take that under advisement and redo this part.
And that's the beauty of having a partner. But when you're writing on your own, the most important thing to start with is realizing that it is a story, and that you do have to have an arc. And think about the way you speak. I wouldn't talk to you and tell you a story just like this and then just keep running on and never stop, and then we're going to go on to the next part. You just go to sleep. There's nothing there. Writing a good melody is a statement. And a statement it's a sentence.
It's
a
dynamic.
musical sentence. It's dynamic.
Dynamics. It's contour. It's slowing down. It's speeding up. It's emphasizing. It's becoming quiet on certain parts of the melody, so you kind of have to listen for it. Where exactly are they going? It's creating tension and interest.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, now we're going to play the chorus of Loretana for you. We played the verse, and now we're going to do the chorus. So now the chorus is starting on the 5 chord, or for, we were in E minor, now we're starting on B. So here's the melody, here's the chorus. Here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 2, 2. That's a natural end.
And then it leads right back to the...
A natural cadence. So there you've got a very simple song, the building of the song going into the chorus, a simple statement, and a cadence.
And the way that now that you think of that, so that's the kind of the beginning songwriting formula, is creating a small story. And all songs are linking up parts of stories. Now you expand to, well, this part's good for a verse. This part is good for a chorus. This part is good for a pre-chorus if you're going to have a pre-chorus. This part is good for bridge. This part is good for soloing over.
And that's a very good point, because sometimes you write something, you think, oh, that's my verse, or that's my chorus. And as the song develops, you wind up going, that's not the catchiest part. Maybe that's the bridge, and maybe I should come up with a different chorus.
That's something else you develop over the course of time.
So don't be locked into something.
Like, we know people say, well, I always write choruses, but I'm not super good at verses or whatever. Then you need to work on that. If you always come up with something that's super hooky, and grabs the listener, and then you don't know how to develop it, that's something you can try working on, or consult with somebody else on how they might tackle the problem. But I feel personally like everybody has a certain set way they listen to stuff, set melodies. They have a certain kind of way that you like to hear things in your head. The people that tend to go the furthest, the Stings of the world, or the Elvis Costellos, or the Joni Mitchells, or whoever else, they find different ways to expand and reframe those melodies. They go really, really deep, and they go, well, I could use this chord, I could use this chord. Some of them are maybe not so worried about learning how to solo. I mean, we become more proficient at that over time with Incendio, but some of the best songwriters are not particularly very technical on their instruments. They really know a great lyric, or they really know how to write a great melody. Like Hoagie Carmichael, kind of a total character voice, but what an amazing writer. Or Tom Waits, amazing writer, and or Dylan, that learned to kind of use and exploit the uniqueness of their instrument and really learn to make a voice.
John Prine, who just passed away, what a great songwriter.
Yeah. So that's a really important thing, is to take the philosophy that Liza had of how you would start. Think of it as, telling a story, the 4 parts of the story that we mentioned. And then, like, once you've kind of gotten that idea, oh, I'm confident that I've gotten this far with this part, now realize that you've made a part. Your part could be a chorus, your part could be a verse, and you learn to kind of assemble them together. Maybe put them in different order, what works best.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, and what note, too. If this is in E minor, if I was going to go, right? I wouldn't want to do that. So you want to think, or that's a good note, but it didn't take me anywhere.
Did it go anywhere? Yeah.
It didn't go anywhere. So these are the things you start to think about when you're writing a melody. How about if we play the song? We'll play. There's an intro to this song too that we wrote after the fact, and it winds up being the end. As
and that's
well.
like another thing.
Yeah,
it's like
that's
what little story can we add to the beginning of this to to kick it off, because really it is just like A B and then soloing. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an intro. We're going to do a statement of the A melody, the B melody. I'll do a short solo. And that's a whole other thing. You can always hire somebody to do your solo in the song. That's the thing. Like songwriting, get the song down together, and then learn to solo a little more or whatever. But the key thing is the contour, the shape of the entire piece. So we're going to play kind of a truncated version.
And a thing to appreciate when he's soloing is that he is incorporating incorporating the melodic fragments of the initial melody in the solo and elaborating on that. So here we go. So you see how also we changed up the rhythm there at the very end from the waltz to the, which is still technically a waltz, but we changed up the rhythm to develop that, and then we put a little interlude of just staying on the one to lead back into the intro, which also became the end. Cadence. So that's how you build a song.
So important. You see all these little parts that you just introduced. Like, there are little things you can add. Bridge is always an interesting part. Adding a couple of chords to well set up the intro, or the exit, which is the intro, which is actually the last thing that I think you wrote for that song. After putting all these other parts together, it's like, what do we need for an intro? So I guess there are a little bit of rules initially that you have to learn so that you can eventually break those rules or move forward beyond those rules.
Absolutely. Learn the rules first so you know what you're breaking out of, so you understand the basic song structure. And I think that's what most people struggle with that are initially starting, is understanding that arc, understanding getting that statement that's interesting. And then, of course, a lot of people just feel like it's too simple and they want to elaborate more than they need or make it more complicated. Remember, keep it simple. All right, so we went through Loretana, which is in a minor key. We're going to break down another song that I wrote called Morning in Maui. It's in a major key. It's a little bit more elaborate as far as harmonic structure and little bit, well, it's just different. So we'll break that down for you and show you how that melody works. This is one I wrote in Maui, and I woke up early and I just heard a melody, and I sat down with the guitar and started playing that and playing the melody, figuring out, how that melody worked, finding the chords for that melody. And then, of course, when I woke JP up early in the morning and said, "Great,
Not good. Not
you're,
good.
You're awake. Take this guitar.
I'm awake now."
And let's work on this song."
And it came out beautifully, and it's been released on the Summoning of the Muse, Summoning of the Muse, our Incendio CD from last year, and we had a whole orchestral arrangement actually that we added to it. Here is in its kind of stripped down form, which is basically the way you wrote it.
And that's interesting. If you want to go check out Incendio Morning in Maui, you can hear how this simple melody developed into a full orchestration. It works with two guitars, it works with orchestration. It just shows you the different things you can do with one melody, with one song. There's so many different ways that you can express that. So we're going to start out, we're not going to do the whole song, we'll start out with the intro and the verse. We'll just see where it goes. Here we go. And... let's just kind of break that down. So there was an intro. Okay, so here we go. It's we're starting in A.
3.
Well, I'm starting I'll start on the verse.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the statement.
3.
And then again.
Oh, sorry.
3 and. He's developing that statement. That statement again. Develops that statement and cadence. He says it again. Okay, so let's explore that. He's basically doing the same statement. I'm reharmonizing him. So that statement is very similar, but by reharmonizing it, you make that statement sound completely different. Listen again. Do it again.
3.
And that's something you'll hear in a lot of songs. You'll hear something, the melody stays the same, but the harmony changes under it. So there is movement, but you're not aware that the melody's moving or the harmony, but it's creating movement. So
It's creating
that's
tension.
tension.
A little bit of, where's it going?
Where's it
but
going?
your melody has really not changed, has barely changed at all.
Exactly.
Or modified very slightly, and you put a lot of yearning into the it's just that's a combination of so many things there. But
Well, that's what we're talking
that's what
about.
You're telling a story.
The melody,
Yeah.
expanding upon it, developing it, and that's what we're doing there. Again, a very simple melody, but this is more in a major key. And then we move on again to now this is the B part, or the chorus, if you want to call it that. So now we were so A, B, and we're doing G sharp. Now we're going to the next part. I'm going to F sharp minor 7. So up to B, C sharp minor with a B in the bass, and now moving to A, and again to F sharp minor. See how he developed that? He's developing that melody. Cadence, and then that leads us back to A. So that gives you an idea of how that simple statement, and you develop it. And as you're improvising, and you hear singers, instrumentalists do this all the time, they're making that statement and they elaborate on it, maybe from one show to the next.
But but it goes back to the foundation of what Liza was talking about earlier. Is create what's the story, and how you create that fundamental story. Sometimes people just kind of never stay on a melody. They noodle all over the place. Guitarists, we are particularly guilty of that. But you have to establish a strong primary melody in order to work against it, to improvise off of it, to develop it, And that's why it's so important to really respect that initial spark and develop a strong foundational melody. So then you can go, be up further, develop it and build it.
And that is what people hang their hat on, is that melody. People come up to us all the time when we're playing and go, "Hey, play that song, ba ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da," or whatever the song is. They remember the melody, maybe they don't remember the name of it, and that's the importance of having a good melody. You want something that somebody's going to go home singing. If they go home singing it, they're going to look you up, they're going to buy your song, they're going to come back because that melody touched them.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I can't think of, how many millions of great songs that we've lost through history because people didn't have the confidence or the backup to be able to go ahead and, hey mom, hey dad, here, hey friend, check out what I wrote. Check out if this is any good, or had it squashed, or had somebody say that's not any good. I think we've all had that. You all as a musician, you will learn to deal with some rejection, but don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not good enough or whatever. I mean, you got to listen to criticism, but start writing, start playing guitar, learning piano, developing your voice. Just start, and then try to meet with other like-minded people that are going to be supportive, and you can be supportive of them, and you'll be amazed at how far you can get.
So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this segment on songwriting.
And we hope you continue to play and develop your songcraft, and we'll look forward to seeing you at some point at a live show on the road where maybe you're seeing us, but maybe we're seeing you. Take care.
Take care.
Hi, my name is Emily Zuzik. I am a local Los Angeles-based singer-songwriter and performing artist. And today you've tuned into a class I'm leading which I'm loosely calling How to Tackle the Blank Page, Breaking Songwriter's Block. The blank page can be very intimidating, and as I've learned both in my songwriting career and before that my journalist career, it's one that often holds us up from many creative practices that, whether or not they lead to the next song classic or not, they stop us. And when you're stopped in one way, you're stopped in other ways as well. I hope you will enjoy this. I hope you will get something from it. I am bringing my experience and the experience of other songwriters I've worked with who I had a chance to talk to as well to this moderated class. And stay tuned. Are you new to songwriting and want to find new tricks to get started? Maybe you're an experienced professional songwriter and you're just hitting a wall. It happens to everyone. Maybe you're part of a team and you're looking for new ways to keep ideas flowing because there's always deadlines. These are all different ways we're going to tackle this situation and talk about songwriting and breaking writer's block. I've had an experience in many of these areas. Let me tell you a little bit about me very quickly. My name is Emily Zuzik, and I have been a songwriter for over 20 years. I have both been a creative songwriter of my own works. I have worked as a co-writer with other writers for creative end. I have worked in a commercial music capacity as a co-writer on jingles, as well as songs for TV and film. A lot of those having very tight deadlines. And I'm hoping that this experience that I have gained will be something that I can share with you, and you will be able to take some stuff away. I guess I should talk a little bit about each of the areas I've worked in. On the original music side, I have done some collaborations, usually in both songwriter side, people such as Ted Russell Camp, Grant Langston, and then on the electronica side, I have this whole other dance world, but I've written with Moby, Toronto-based DJ Solid Stone, UK acts Refix and Bipolar and Sizzlax. And then there's other people on the commercial side. A friend of mine by the name of Art Hayes, who works as a composer. We did some music for the WB show Aim High. We also did the theme song for the NBC show Love Bites, and had some of our co-writes that were written for commercial end be licensed into movies. Another person I've written with is Jimmy Laval, who is both known as a composer of films as well as the main songwriter and personality behind the band The Album Leaf. I've also worked with Blue Man Group, both in front as well as behind the scenes as a songwriter. We ended up working with some other songwriters to kind of put together a jingle that ran in a local insurance ad. All of these sorts of experiences give you new insight into the songwriting process. And depending on where you are in your career, these points I'm going to talk about will either be things you've run across before, or perhaps you've never thought about, or maybe beyond that, they're things that you might see in a new light that might jog the creative wheels. And that's the whole end goal of this. So let me set this up by, let's talk about the process. You want to write a song. Maybe you just want to write a song because you're new at it and you've been playing in bands and you want to start creating your own material. And like I said, there's other levels of professional jobs and career paths that have you working at to different end goals and at different deadlines. The process is really just, we need to find music, we need to find lyrics, we need to put them together, they need to make sense. Seems easy enough, right? Well, there's always that moment, it happens to everyone, where you get the notebook open and then you're like, oh, I've got nothing. Or you write down a bunch of things, you're like, oh, it's not coming together. And these are frustrations. They can stop you, they can be stumbling blocks, and we've all been there, and we're trying to get through it. So, let's talk about some ways to tackle the blank page. So the first step is we're going to talk about that's something a lot of us are uncomfortable with: a schedule. I have this fault for a very long time. I like to be free. I'm an artist. I like to feel my way through it. It's one of those things that I shouldn't have to lay out my day bit by bit. But guess what? One of the things I've learned across the years, both working outside of an artistic field and especially when working with creatives, is that if you schedule it, it will be on your calendar and you have to show up. So that's not to say that if you say you're going to get up every morning and write for an hour, that anything good is going to come of it. But I'll tell you one thing that will happen. You will start to change. You will start to get up and go through the motions. It's like a practice, almost like a meditation. You'll start doing it, and as you do it each day, it will become easier. There will be less hesitation about, oh, it's not good enough. You'll just get it down on the page. And in moments like that, over time, you're going to find you will come up with things because your mind will be so used to the process of getting out the notebook and writing things down that you will put up fewer walls in your mind about it being good or not. You'll just get it down there, and you'll find that there's a groove that you start to hit. It's like a muscle memory. I actually got this idea from a songwriter friend of mine by the name of Brad Bird. And he actually has an entire philosophy about planning out his day. It's far more planning than I ever put to my day, but I do plan out my day as well. But he has 15-minute increments. It's a mix of emails, and then 15 minutes maybe yoga, and then 15 minutes phone calls, 15 minutes get up outside, walk the dog. I don't know if it's strict 15 minutes every day, but it is a way that he has found organizes his life and sets aside a bulk amount of time that's prioritized for writing. This is another thing I ran into when I was working as a journalist years ago, and I met some people who wrote fiction. I dabbled in it a little bit myself. It never went anywhere. But the idea of either starting your day with writing for an hour, or maybe you're better after that first cup of coffee. Maybe you're best in the afternoon. You find out what works best for you. You take into account how your energy fluctuates, how your mind creatively works, and then you find the best time for you to be creative. Book it into your schedule. Show up every day and do it. And over time, you will find that this will get things going. And that's half the battle with songwriting or writing in general. So it's practice, not perfection, and it's showing up and being held accountable. Number 1. Number 2, pull from books, movies, characters, artwork. I know this sounds a little... Number 2, pull from things in your world. Now, in this situation, I'm going to talk about an experience I had where I was asked to write a creative song with the theme of visual arts. I had nothing more to go on. And the only thing I had to do was it had to be original and it had to be done by the deadline. So this was many years back. This was a art magazine called Asopus, and it was challenging and really stimulating, this art project. I turned to visual arts in the sense of a painting or a painter by the name of Ernst Kirchner. He was a member of the German Expressionists, of Die Brücke, and turn-of-the-century painter. He did a lot with the subject of women of the night and the street social scene of Berlin. And what was really interesting to me was the idea of these women, which appear in many different paintings of his at the time. Because there's several things going on in them. There are these women who are highly adorned. They are both known to be prostitutes, so there's elements of scorn probably towards them, as well as sexual intrigue. And there's also this element that they are running the show, that the streets, as much as they are a point of connection with a potential client, or just socially with friends or other people they know who walk along the streets, there is this idea that it's almost like a stage, and they are prancing with their fabulous hats and their outfits across it, and there's a power in that. So what I thought would be interesting is, let's take those women from several different paintings at this era and let's create a character based on them. Because what's obvious is that they're being watched, whether by the men on the street or perhaps scorning other members of society from windows or on the street, but also by the painter himself, Ernst Kirchner, who it is known was friendly with many of these women in real life at the time. And not only were they being watched, but they understood how to play that to get what they needed, whether it was clients or attention or whatever. So let's make a woman who is prepared and who understands she's being watched, but also knows that in that lies her power. So you have several examples of ways to create it. There are historical places that are being used in the titles of these paintings. So you're painting a picture with words and with music and creating this scene. And what's nice is half the work is done for you as a songwriter. It's almost paint by numbers, but what you do with it is really what's interesting. And depending on where you go with that, can lead to some really interesting songwriting results. Number 3, find a moment in time and create an act that encapsulates it. I like this one for several reasons. I got this idea from a friend of mine and frequent collaborator, also the producer of my record, Ted Russell Camp, amazing Los Angeles-based songwriter. And I asked him, what are some of your tips for songwriting? Obviously, we had things like co-writing, which I'll get to later. But the one thing he liked was the idea of this finding a moment in time. Now, this plays into a couple things, which I'm going to talk about a little later. One, which is write what you know, so it doesn't feel false. Draw upon your life experience. But this idea of taking a moment from your life and then finding a way to capture it in an act and write about that moment, that was interesting to me. That way you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew. You're not trying to say, write about the whole relationship. Maybe you're writing about that point in time in a relationship where you're scared to make the final commitment. And then you can just play around there for a while. Explore what that means to you. An example that Ted gave me, I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, is that he remembers distinctly the week before he asked his wife to marry him. And the thought process that was in that moment in time, things like the fear of jumping into that level of commitment. I think we've all been there, anyone who's been married or going into a higher level of committed relationship. But also the joy in that, the excitement, the what if factor. All of these emotions can trigger directions you can write about in a verse. And then maybe there's one chorus that encapsulates the whole mood of it. Maybe an I don't know, or maybe my head's just out to pasture, but in a poetic way, of course. This is a good starting point. We all have life experience. We all have points where we're excited, or moments when we're scared, or times when we're really sad or frustrated or angry or ready to I'm done with the world. These are the moments that you can tap into. Not everybody is a journal person. I, for one, have been a writer most of my life. So while it hasn't been as consistent as in day to day as it used to be for me, I have kept a pretty accurate record of things going on in my life dating back to junior high. So sometimes when I'm struggling to come up with a story or lyrics, or I'm at a point in a song and I don't know what to do next, I'll go back to these books and I'll hone in on a particular time in my life that might fit the occasion that I'm writing about in the song. And I'll read what happened then, because you can't remember everything in your life. That's what is nice about having journals. It's sort of a document on how you went through it and what you were thinking and what were your possible ideas, directions you could have gone. And that's verse 1, 2, and 3. You could take each of those, play with them for a bit, bring it back to the main idea in the chorus, and then you have the format, the roadmap of a song right there. And the nice part is when you are allowed to revisit it in the sense of a journal or talking to someone who knew you at that point in your life, perhaps, it may trigger other memories that by no other reason have just escaped your mind, because we only have so much space in our brain to keep things, and things slip away. But when you revisit the documents or people who were there, they may jog other things, and that could lead you to the next step. And in those next steps, lyrical goldmine. Next up in the world of tricks for songwriting, make a deadline. Another way I like to say it is finish the damn song. But the deadline was something I never really dealt with for myself as a songwriter until I got into the world of commercial music writing. And in that case, it's normally not up to you. You get a song brief, you get a sound alike, you say, we just need 2 verses and a chorus, or we need a chorus, verse, chorus out, because usually most people don't want to hear more than a minute in that world. And we need it by 5 o'clock, and it's 1 p.m. So you're in a big crunch time. This is it's a great skill to learn, because if you can turn that stuff around quickly and with precision, you're going to be heads up in the game if that's your end goal. It's nice to have that skill even on the creative side, because then you're not lingering with half-done songs that make you feel like, oh, I haven't written something I really like in a while. I have another example of this on the creative side. When I was living in New York, I used to run an event that was called What's in a Name, and it was a songwriters meetup. I had a group of songwriters who were interested in the project, and I had a list of emails. And then someone from outside of that group would give us a word, and I would send the word out to all of the songwriters. I would book a room in town, venue, a month out, and we would all write songs based on that one word or inspired by that one word, and we'd get together a month later and play them all. So this was really good in a lot of ways. For one, as the founder and the main person who ran it, I had to always write a song. So while other people could decide if they wanted to participate month to month, I was definitely under the microscope, and it forced me to write. And getting uncomfortable and having a deadline became probably my two best weapons in creative songwriting, which is weird, but it worked for me, and maybe it would work for you. The other cool thing about that project was, as much as it forced you, in this case me, to write a new song, it also forced other people, and when we got together, we got to hear what everyone else did. So, as a writer and as an artist and creator, you could go in and go, wow, they went a totally different direction with that word than I would have gone, and it's really cool. And when you hear something that excites you in that way, it will open up a new direction in yourself as a writer. I think that's a really cool thing. And I think that's a cool philosophy for life in general, is if you stay open, you will be introduced to things that you maybe never thought of, or maybe even had judgment against in the past. But because you see them in a different way and weren't told to see them in a different way, you get opened up and you grow larger in the sense that you let more in. And that's always helpful for anyone trying to do creative pursuits, or even if these creative pursuits are to a commercial end in the way of commercial music. Say you don't hit it with the pitch that came in at 1 and was due at 5. Maybe that song then gets developed further and becomes something you release on your own. Maybe it's something you put to the side and you revisit the next time you either have a brief or you're writing and you're like, wow, I really like that chord progression we wrote for that jingle. Didn't get used. Maybe I could reopen that and play with that a bit more. But it's a starting point, or it's a jumping off point for the next challenge in songwriting that you come across. My final topical trick to this whole songwriting, tackling the blank page, breaking through writer's block approach is co-writing. This was something I came to late in my career. I was always a write on my own kind of gal, and I don't know what it was, but at some point I allowed myself to open up and to consider writing with other people. And my entire world changed. I have to say these days that probably 80% of the writing I do is with other people. I really like the process now, and perhaps it was something in me that had to shift in order to embrace it. But what I really like about it, and this came up with all the other songwriters I spoke to, was this idea of co-writing, is that there's only so much you can bring to the table. You can draw on other people's inspiration, you can draw upon your life, you can be given deadlines, but what's nice about co-writing is you suddenly have this whole other world of experience and opinions and thoughts and judgment and just otherness that you can bring to it. The first thing that was brought up by one of my cohorts was when you're dealing with co-writing, you sit down with a party and you talk about what you have in common. And sometimes just in that starting point of a conversation, which you would probably have with anyone you just met at a party or at a bar or in a meetup or at a family occasion, you're meeting people, you're getting to know them. And perhaps you find something that you both feel very strongly about, or that you had a commonality in your life or a shared acquaintance. And you find those commonalities and you can say, let's write about them. Or, hey, we've both had that experience of being, I don't know, the sports person who was a painter on the side, and how that had such conflict in high school. Let's write about that person. It's just a total thing off the top of my head. But that opens up a lot of new directions that you could use as topics. Or even just if you like the same bands, maybe you're like, how about that song by Elvis Costello? You know, where they do that progression, where the this to the this to the this, and you're like, I love that progression, that's great. Why don't we take a portion of that and then bring it around to this other chord? And then you're on your way. You're writing new music. It's maybe based on a shared love of an artist. Another thing I found that when I've been co-writing, especially with people that I'm not close friends with, once you go through that getting to know you, hey, who do we know in common? What do we both like? Here's a piece of music. Is you talk about what was it that inspired it? This is in the scenario if there's a piece of music already written by one of the parties and you're trying to write additionally, like say top line and lyrics to a piece of musical composition. I've been in this position a few times in electro world and some various pop situations. And what I like in that space is I say like, okay, so you were writing this piece. What was it about this piece you were thinking about? Did the title you give it have any significance? Can I play off that? Why did you want to write it, say, in B flat minor? What were you thinking about? Can I play with that? I was recently involved in a songwriting experience with someone I'd never met who was a mutual friend, and they had a piece of electro pop music that I had a chance to listen to. I could hear the parts. I could hear sort of melodies on top of those parts that would work well. And so I sang along and sent it back, and they're like, I like this and I like this. Great, let's run with that. But for the words, sometimes that's the hardest part, especially if there's a bit of music already in place. And I said, okay, well, what were you thinking? What are some things that come to your mind when you hear this piece? And what we got on was talking about synesthesia, which is associating colors and sounds and feelings. And I really like that too, because it gives you ideas like, well, in this section, I feel like it's very blue. Okay, so now we have blue. What are we going to write about? Maybe the ocean, maybe the sky, maybe sadness. But you can play with the metaphors tied into these associations, and that gives you other wells to draw upon. That is fun, that brainstorming process. And it also takes the pressure off you as the writer who has to come up with the whole story. You can kind of piecemeal it together and create a puzzle based on different experiences with the music. And that is another whole realm of co-writing. As far as the commercial side is concerned with co-writing, a lot of it is just getting a lot of people in the room and maybe starting with a riff. Someone picks up the riff from there. Pretty soon this jam sort of formulates into a song, or someone takes the parts. I like that, okay, let's see, that's good for a verse, that's good for a chorus, let's bring it in. That other part, great for the bridge, and then you have the structure together. This is a good time to bring up structure, because this was another trick I was going to bring up. Sometimes you have ideas about what you want to write about, and you might even have some chord progressions, but you're not really sure how to put it all together. And this is one of those things, it's less a typically creative approach. I like to call it the technical process approach. But let's start with creating the outline. What does the song look like? And so I did a little bit of digging around. I found a master class online that Carlos Santana did, and he talked about song structure. And I'd read about this in different songwriting classes in the past, but I don't have the books on hand to bring up titles and authors. But they are out there if you want to dig deeper. But there's 3 that I came up with that I thought would be interesting to mention. The first is one that was used a lot in the Tin Pan Alley writers, and it's AABA. In this case, A is a section of the song. Sometimes it's called the verse, sometimes it's called the chorus. It isn't a specific thing, but it's the form that then in AABA goes that form, and then that form repeats again. The B is a different form, and then the A is returned to the original form. So that's a possibility. You're like, okay, so then I have 3 verses and a chorus, or 3 verses that kind of have a chorus tag and a bridge breakaway. And that gives you a way to put together your song. Another structure that comes up a lot in pop music is the AB, AB, C, AB, or AB, AB, C, B. In that case, you're talking verse, chorus, bridge, verse chorus or bridge chorus. I'm sorry, verse chorus, bridge, final chorus. That helps too. You have a chorus, write a couple verses, throw in a bridge, and then you're like, let's put it all together. And then another form that you find a lot in early rock and roll is just called the verse chorus form, where it's verse chorus, however long you want to go. Sometimes that helps. And, I don't knock it. You don't always have to start off with the theme or the story or the character or the arc of the story in the song. Sometimes it's just, hey, let's write a simple rock tune which has two parts, and I've got this part for this and this part for another, and maybe then the words come after the fact. It's all in how you want to do it. And finally, and this is sort of, I'd like to think, the last bit of wisdom I could possibly impart, which is don't get precious. Don't feel that when you're going to write a song, it has to be the best song ever. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. I do it. I've done it for years. I do it less now because I find that the less I put on myself that I have to achieve some goal in my songwriting, that I might actually achieve it without putting that pressure on myself. That's not to say I won't put a deadline on myself, but I don't say this song, I'm going to aim to make it here. And if it's feeling like it's here, then it's a total failure, because that's not going to help anyone. And within the don't get too precious sentiment is the idea of practice and grace and even failure, but not letting it stop you. Because everyone's going to try. They're going to write something that's amazing at some point. And they're going to write something that's at some point. And they're going to write a lot of false starts and go like, ugh, yuck. But maybe one of those yucks in 5 years will be something that's or maybe it's the last element of a bridge that becomes amazing. These are things that we can use. These are actions we can repeat and repeat over and over again until we get to some next level in our writing. It's been my experience. It's been the experience of a lot of other songwriters. And hopefully it'll be your experience too. Once again, I am honored to impart whatever wisdom I can to you. I hope you got some good ideas for your next songwriting projects. Once again, my name is Emily Zuzik. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. My email is info@emilyzuzik.com. I don't know if there will be handouts that will accompany these classes or not, but if there is a link from any website, my website is www.emilyzuzik.com. And if anyone's up for a songwriting challenge, maybe we can work together sometime. I wish you all the best of luck and have fun writing.